615 sessions that we have done. So we bring before you a cast of friends and favorites. We start off with Rhett, Bryan of Titans Radio and Turron Davenport, the OGTD, here on the 615 sessions. Of course, you can find Turron on ESPN.com, the Talking with TD podcast, wherever it is you get your podcast, rate, review, and subscribe. Rhett, Bryan, all the great work. Happy to be back at work for Rhett, Bryan and Titans Radio, a contributor to the OTP, and, of course, regularly with our friends on 104.5 The Zone. Boys, it's good to see you back. Oh, by the way, show and tell with Rhett, Bryan coming later in the show. Let me not bury the lead off the top. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, too.
Glad to be a part.
Early. Glad to be a part of the century mark for this podcast. These whiskers right here will show that I'm heading towards a century myself. But, yeah, I do have something special, show and tell, for this 100th edition.
We are going to talk about all things Titans. We have talked with 4 players already today on Zoom. You will hear this podcast before you hear from Mike Vrabel on the Tuesday media availability. But we're going to talk about training camp now that things are actually in session. Players are on the field. Vic Beasley is here. Even still, he has to clear the protocol, but at least they have found Vic Beasley to then put him in the beginning of the testing protocol. 3 negative tests over the course of 4 days before Vic Beasley can join the team. We spoke today to Adoree Jackson, Jeff Simmons, A.J. Brown, and Ben Jones, the diamond in the rough of the 3 of the other guys. Ben Jones, Titan center. We have a lot to discuss. Let's start, though, with I think the most important position consideration that has to be given outside of right tackle, and that's what's going on with the defensive backs. Turron, I asked you guys before we started the pod what we needed to hit on specifically, and something that stands out in a big way to you, TD, is how they will address the nickel situation. You see Logan Ryan moving to safety for free agent visits, prospective free agents, citing his own stat line and having his agent email that stat line alongside other safeties in the league. The nickel corner, though, for the Titans, the void that he leaves, and Adoree Jackson speaking on that today, still not willing to give us much in the way of insight as to how much time he'll spend there.
Yeah, he spoke a little bit about what's different as far as having to play in space and know the corner as well as some of the linebacker responsibilities. But I think we should hit on that because as opposed to just having one guy that you just trot out there to be their nickel, they now have an assortment of guys. And I think when you look at different teams, whether, you look at the going against the Colts, who we know they'll face twice, they like to move T.Y. Hilton around. And there have been times before where Adoree Jackson traveled with him. But, with this nickel situation, they put T.Y. Hilton in the slot. Now you could adequately have a guy in that nickel position, in that slot, that could run down the field with him. But then you turn around and you look at, okay, let's say they decide to put Michael Pittman Jr. in the slot. Well, no problem. That's when you go to a guy like a Jonathan Joseph or a Malcolm Butler to go against a bigger power slot, what I call it. But, okay, let's expand it a little bit further. They like to use Jack Doyle in an assortment of ways. Okay, so Jack Doyle flexes and he's in the slot, no problem. You could obviously drop Kevin Byard down. Me personally, I always think that it's best. Like if I was calling a defense, I would always have him be center field, and just keep everything in front of him. But that being said, you could drop Kenny Vaccaro down. But if you want to go nickel, now you have Amani Hooker, the guy who made his living, going against, Noah Fant, going against George Kittle, going against T.J. Hawkinson in college at Iowa. So matching up against whatever teams have to put out there in that slot position, I think that's something that the Titans now have a strength on. And I'm not saying that they've upgraded because let's make no mistake about it, Logan Ryan was very, very good in that slot. There were some issues, right? We won't sugarcoat it. There were issues, speed guys, et cetera. But I think now you're able to match up to whatever a team brings.
What you said it well, Turron, and I agree with you. That's one of the reasons why they drafted an Amani Hooker is because of his versatility in doing things just like this. And you're right, when you think about some of the places, even though Logan Ryan had a great stat line year, there were some plays that were given up. I think about that Nicole Hardman 60-yard play against the Chiefs in the regular season at Nissan Stadium in Week 11 or whatever that was. Just one that comes to mind. But, yeah, that's one of the reasons why they put him in there. And, you know, he had a lot of work last year as a rookie, not just on teams, but in that, you know, that three safety package, the big safety look. So,
Yeah,
I think you're onto something there. I think that's I would agree with that 100%, that is a place that they can look in certain formations.
Let me ask you this, Rhett. Would you rather have week 1 in Denver, September the 14th, at this point? We'll see how everything plays out. College football making things much more uncertain in our world than ever before. Would you rather, though, when the Titans go nickel, start Jonathan Joseph in that 3-corner look or Christian Fulton with Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson, assuming that those will be the other two that you have out there? Or does it depend on what look the offense is giving you? Are you comfortable? What would be your preference, knowing what we do right now very early on in August the 10th?
Well, you know, and this is no disrespect to Jonathan Joseph because he's an aging guy. I don't know what he has left tread on the tires wise. But you just mentioned, Turron mentioned, you know, Noah Fant, who's up there in that system with all these other weapons, and they went offense heavy in the draft because everyone's trying to catch up with the Kansas City Chiefs in that division. So you've got some weapons to contend against. I'd almost prefer that you have a vet there, but I guess it depends on what they see in the practice field with a Christian Fulton. And this is where not having a preseason makes that the $64,000 question in all this. Now, however, if we're talking about this in a Denver scenario, don't forget, Juwan James opted out as the right tackle. And if I am Drew Lock, I am not happy about that. I mean, you don't wish him any ill will, but I'm saying that becomes problematic on that offensive line for the Denver Broncos. So there's other problems in this that could actually free up some things on the back end for this secondary.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Turron, that we won't know what kind of looks Fulton is getting through this, whether you want to call them OTAs, whether they look like OTAs. There will be no contact at this point for the first couple of weeks. They have about 11 training camp practices that we will be able to attend over the course of this whole thing. And at what point he actually gets to see some action against A.J. Brown or Khalif Raymond or Rashard Davis, like against any of these dudes, we just don't know. So to give you the same question, would you opt for experience in a situation like that over what we believe to be high-level talent in Christian Fulton, or are you saying to roll the dice and give the rookie a shot in a week 1 game in a big spot on national television?
I would be more inclined to go with the veteran. And I think Jonathan Joseph could still play some corner. I think he could still be solid for you. And for me, it just goes back to not having those preseason games because that game action you could simulate live action as much as you want in practice, which is something Coach Vrabel said that he's going to do, but you just can't emulate the actual game speed that you experience. Now, you look at what the Broncos have. You're talking about Cortland Sutton. They got Judy, right? And they got KJ Hamler. So we're talking about some outstanding players. A couple of them will also be rookies. But I personally would more inclined to roll out Jonathan Joseph. I wouldn't put Fulton out there so quickly and risk, even though he's played so much football and he is an advanced corner, I still remain convinced he's a top 5 corner, maybe in top 3 in this past draft. I remain convinced of that, but I just don't – I wouldn't roll him out there early and risk just having that confidence, shaken, and then having that be something he has to overcome. I would rather have that hungry guy that wants to get out there, but then at the same time, you got to balance that with not jumping routes and being too aggressive. But I still would. I want the hungry player and allow him to work towards getting that time on the field.
That might be the only position on defense where I feel that way. Like if you break a corner's confidence early and he's forced to live with that, like in most cases, it's easier for the defense to get up to speed than it is for an offense. We know this over the course of just see ball, get ball for linebackers, defensive line. You can understand how to rush the passer. Even if you're not refined as a pass rusher, it's easier for defensive players, for the most part, to get out on the field early. But a corner, it's so much more difficult because already in this league that's legislated to have the rules benefit all things offense, all things point scoring. So you're fighting the officials, you're fighting potentially veteran players, understanding that the Broncos have a rookie wide receiver, but you will be in a hugely vulnerable position if that's the lineup that they choose to trot out. It's people looked at the Jonathan Joseph sign, and it was the laziest the laziest line to draw between Jonathan Joseph and Clowney Watch, the thing that people continue to harp on over and over again because they are very close friends from their times with the Texans. And if you want to do that, fine. But in the reality, what Jonathan Joseph represents is a safety net for you at corner in a way that you could not get with, Tremaine Brock. The play was so forgettable, I almost forgot his name, in a way that Tremaine Brock really couldn't help you with the way that you needed to down the stretch run. And that happens to everybody over the course of the season. But corner, a particularly difficult position to play. Let's stay on the defense, though, as we're talking about the Titans and this training camp situation that they find themselves in. Jeffrey Simmons talked to us today as we're taping this podcast, Monday as you're hearing this podcast. Jeffrey Simmons was talking about the slights that people are levying against this Titans defensive line. Have you guys heard people trashing the Titans D-line? Because I think he's doing some Michael Jordan stuff with that and making it up, trying to get motivation.
I've heard some. Because I've seen a lot of, now that Jarrell Casey is gone, what do they have left? And I say, well, you have a guy that wears number 90 left that is quietly one of the best interior guys in the league as far as, just all around and being that traffic cop up front. So I think Simmons is just a great compliment. But I like the fact that he's finding a way to channel more of that fire, to come out. I think that's good at a young age, second year in the league, being able to do that.
I think Turron's right in the national 30,000-foot view that a lot of reporters, when they do a blurb, a few lines about the Titans, it's like, well, Jarrell Casey's in Denver now, so what's, they're going to have to pick up the pieces.
Name names, Rhett. Say CBS Sports. Do it.
I can't. Well, going back to looking like 100, I can't remember who said it, but I know that I've read those things. But I'll tell you something that I came away a couple of things with Jeffrey Simmons today and his availability. You notice how much more confident he is? You notice how, it was the best time with him in front of that in a forum like that than any of his stuff his rookie year. And he was very accommodating, very nice,
Right.
But you could tell he was finding his way through the league as a rookie and also getting back from that knee. And I'll tell you this, guys, I've been here for a long time. I've covered this team since they put on that two-tone blue for the first time. And I'll tell you this, I have not been this excited about a very large defensive lineman since those 2 years that Albert Haynesworth had. That was his end of his rookie year and the year they franchise tagged him, where he absolutely played his ass off and was just a disruptor. And then, to go with a Kyle Vanden Bosch, it was the things I saw him do in that 2-year window. It is astounding. It's like what you see Calais Campbell doing in a big, nimble guy fashion. Just like, how does that guy do that? It's like he's like a basketball player. This is what I'm so excited to see Jeffrey Simmons in year 2. I don't think there's going to be anything to do with a sophomore slump, anything like that. You can see the way he has already reformed and shaped his body. He's confident about the knee. You can hear that in his voice today. Hey, AFC South, look out.
See, the thing, I do it every year. I caution myself against doing it every year, but I've done it again with Jeffrey Simmons because, one, you're right, he's much more comfortable in a press conference setting with us. It reminds me of how much different Harold Landry was from year 1 to year 2. Similarly to when he got up before last year's training camp at the podium, and he's all rocked up, and Harold Landry big and bad. He knows he's big and bad, and he's up there talking to us like he's pass rusher number one. I get the same vibe from Jeffrey Simmons. So my first rule: don't buy off on the press conference. Second, don't buy off on the Instagram excitement, because all of these guys. I mean, it's such an easy trap to fall into. And this is not applicable to people who are built like superheroes like Jeffrey Simmons. I have body worshipped at the throne of Jeffrey Simmons multiple times on this podcast. But the things that I've cautioned myself every other year, I'm buying into with Jeffrey Simmons. The thing that sets it over the top for me, though, is just what you mentioned there, Rhett, disruption. The way that they talk about Clowney, they need Clowney or people outside of the Titans or outside of people who normally cover the Titans. They talk about needing this disruptor across that defensive front. Well, that's what Jeffrey Simmons is. Jeffrey Simmons' role is to be a disruptor. He mentioned in maybe not this most recent availability, but I think previously talking to us about pass rush and talking to us about, understanding where his sweet spot is, not trying to overdo things, not trying to become a full-on pass rusher in the way that people think this team needs to find, but just figuring out how best to disrupt the quarterback in a way that Jeffrey Simmons is physically, God-given, able to do. I think this, coupled with the idea that they really don't need that many down defensive linemen in this scheme, I think that helps them ease the burden of some of the depth questions that they're facing. Because really, if you're only playing with two down defensive linemen at any given point, if that's your scheme, if your scheme is matchup-based, if your scheme is multiple, drink if you've heard that before, not you, Turron, I know you don't partake. But if all of those things are so, then why shouldn't we be drinking the Jeff Simmons Kool-Aid? Because the film is out there, and that was 10 pounds ago and on a bad knee.
Now, let me say this, though, and I know what you're saying. Don't fall in love. Don't get a guy crush. Whatever.
I do it every year. I threw my phone across the office just
Buck, there's a reason why Jarrell Casey is wearing that Orange Crush defense. There's a reason he's in Denver. There's a reason they moved on from him a year early, 98, the guy they drafted, Jeffrey Simmons. I'm not saying you can just replace Jarrell Casey, and I'm no disrespect to him at all. I have the most respect for him as what he did for this franchise in some of its darkest days when they weren't winning diddly squat. And I wish him nothing but the best. But there's a reason why they moved on.
And I think when you look at Jeffrey Simmons, along with that body change, and he talked about it, he has a better range of movement, change of direction. And that's something that he feels natural with. The man is not going to be playing with the brace. So, you're going to see him be able to do more things. And then he also talked a little bit the last time we had him on a virtual conference, is he talked about losing that weight and working on not just the power, but having other things that go along with that. So I think he can be that disruptor. But for those who are mentioning Clowney and the need for him, I could definitely see that. Because there are a few things you could never have too many of. And one of them is pass rushers. I mean, I saw a team in 2017, the Eagles, they went at least 6 deep at defensive end. And then one of their DNs rotated inside, Brandon Graham, and played some D tackle. So you can never have too many pass rushers. And I think if they were to add Clowney, it would be a good thing. But if they don't, you still have someone in Jeffrey Simmons that could bump up and down the line of scrimmage, that could collapse that pocket from the interior. So guys like Harold Landry and Vic Beasley, Kamale Correa, and Derek Roberson, a guy that I'm very high on, these guys could get to the quarterback.
Roberson's fascinating to me because he clearly has the ability to get to the quarterback. We saw his effectiveness late in the season when they were starting to implement him. He was a guy who went undrafted, but I know, Turron, you were high on him coming out of SMU throughout the draft process because he does have that physical ability. He's got some things that he needs to shore up so that he doesn't just become potentially a more talented Sharif Finch, where you think this guy's got something as an undrafted, and then ultimately he fades from the lineup in a year where you could have used pass rushers. I'm curious to see how much run he gets, or whether at this point in his career he is still just a situational pass rusher.
I think right now he's a situational guy, and Shane Bowen kind of touched on that. He said in order to get more snaps, he needs to be better on first and second down. But, hey, man, there's nothing wrong with being a situational guy. I saw that the 49ers use a dude by the name of Alden Smith in situations, and he was one of the best pass rushers and most productive guys, when he had everything straight. I think the main thing for Roberson is just settling in, and that's what he had to do and get that comfort level. And once he did that, I mean, Taylor Lewan said it. There was a point where he was really doing well with that show team. So I think if he could just carry that over into this year, that comfort level, I think he'll be in good shape. And I expect him to be in the rotation.
The thing about Derek Roberson that people forget is he got derailed early on. He was a five-star recruit at the University of Texas. He had a bad car wreck. Next thing you know, he's at Sam Houston State. He's the all-time sack leader in the season for them last year, 16 and a half sacks, whatever it was. And so he is just now kind of getting his traction in this thing. Yeah. I look at him the way he's situational. You're right. I look at him right now the way I looked at Kamale Correa when he came in off of trade from the Ravens, in terms of he was a second-round pick, but they had using him, how to figure things out. And Kamale played really well down the stretch for the Titans and heading toward those playoff runs, especially, after you lost Cam Wake and, Harold Landry's getting all these reps. I look at him like that right now. That's what I see. Derek Roberson's situational. And look, in some games, situationally, he did a great job. That was at the Saints game. I thought he was going to get a safety.
Yeah.
So
he was very close to a hat trick on Drew Brees.
Yeah, right.
Very, very close. He'll have to combat the mighty New England Patriots with Cam Newton and now Lamar Miller. Ian Rappaport has just reported that he is expected to sign a one-year deal with the Pats coming off of ACL surgery. So that is an interesting addition to the AFC atmosphere. I don't know, before we move on, TD, because I want to make sure we save enough time. Turron has a church meeting to get to, and we want to make sure that TD
we have time.
TD is right with all the appropriate parties, so we don't want to take too much of his time, and we want to leave some time for Rhett show and tell. Scale of 1 to 10, though, if we're going to spend a little more time on Roberson, TD, scale of 1 to 10, rate the drip.
Oh, his drip is I have to give him an 8 or a 9.
Not undrafted meter, in terms of swag.
When they took the meter and put it on his bracelet, the diamond meter, and he was like, "Yo, stop playing with me." I was cracking up. But he got the wheels, he has the jewelry, the clothes. I think he's definitely, and I think he just bought a new house too. So he's
got the cars too.
Play off the field too.
Looking for
and
somebody.
He's got the cars too.
I was about to say,
he's got the whips.
Looking for somebody to camo wrap the Mozzie I saw on his Instagram story. I saw
and
that.
He's got an '86 Monte Carlo Super Sport too that he flat blacked out, matte black.
Yep.
I seen that rolling up to practice a time or two. Derek Roberson got it figured out off the field, if not yet on the field, but we will see what potential he has yet to live up to. Before we get to Rhett's show and tell, college football is in a world of, I don't even know what, just turmoil. Based on the reports that we've seen with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 considering canceling their season, we thought that we had seen some light with the SEC. Everybody was back to normal. We had red meat. We were complaining about schedules. Should Alabama have gotten off so easily? Should Georgia have gotten a harder schedule? Why does everybody in the SEC hate Tennessee? All of these things. And now we find ourselves on the precipice of potentially a canceled college football season. The MAC, the MAC getting out there first and saying that they will not play fall football in a way that could have a domino effect. You guys are two of the biggest draft nicks I know. And this has massive implications, not just for the college football season, but on the evaluation process for the NFL. TD, if we don't have a college football season, how the hell do we go about drafting guys next year?
Well, that 2019 tape becomes just that much more important. I think it starts with that, but then you got to hope that things start to somewhat be normalized, and they find a way to have the Shrine Week, find a way to have the Senior Bowl, and find a way to have the Combine. I think that's really what it comes down to. But it's unfortunate because you have guys who come out of nowhere, and look, it happened last year, right? With Joe Burrow. I mean, at this time last year, he was a third or maybe fourth round pick. The guy ended up blowing up and was the first round pick. So for those late bloomers, it's going to be tough. I think it really goes down to just finding those traits, and a lot of times you're going to have to go even further beyond the production that you see on the field. You want to do that anyway, but it just gets pushed up even more. This year, this draft evaluation process is going to show who the top-level draft nicks are, who the top-level actual personnel folks are. This is going to be a key separating point for you to see because it's not as easy as it's been other years.
Turron is exactly right. The tape. That's what look, you can run all you want in underwear at 40-yard dashes and, all that stuff. I get caught up in the bench press and the vertical leap, but it's the tape. And since we've been recording this, the Mountain West Conference has canceled its football season due to COVID concerns per Brett McMurphy on Twitter. And that's happened just in the last couple of minutes.
Man.
Now, where it becomes problematic, Buck, is if college sports programs decide to try to play football in the spring, because that throws a monkey wrench in everything with what Turron's been saying. How do you have the Senior Bowl? How do you have the Combine? It would be one of the most important combines ever based on if that 2019 tape is all you got to go off of. And then you just look at the CBA. The current CBA states, it mandates that the NFL draft has to be held by June the 2nd. So, I mean, you'd have a lot of hurrying up, and you would have no pre-draft. I mean, if they play college football in the spring, I don't know what you do with pre-draft visits, workouts, all that kind of stuff would be topsy-turvy, kind of like 2020's been. How about that?
Oh, you do it on Zoom, just like we're doing now. What's wrong with the pre-draft visit?
The virtual combine.
No, they cannot. Here's how I feel about the combine for entirely selfish reasons, because of course that's what it's all about. I hate that they would be removing the combine from Indianapolis this year and taking it to Los Angeles. So if I can't have the combine in Indy at Kilroy's at 1:45 in the morning when we all have to be at work for availability the next day, I don't want it. I don't want it anywhere but Indianapolis. So if it has to be virtual instead of LA, maybe I'm open to discussions on that.
Buck, yeah. I'll tell you one other thing. I'm sorry to cut in there, Turron. One other thing I was going to tell you that NFL operations has come out with today is about the officials in the NFL game this year, and that they will be geographically assigned so that most of them can drive to the games in their area. And normally, under the way things usually work, you wouldn't get a same officiating crew for your team more than twice a year and usually about 6 weeks apart. All that's out the window, just like everything else is this year. They're saying that that's the way that they're going to approach this, and they will be given personal protective equipment and electronic whistles and all of this, and I guess we're going to see how that works out and who's assigned in what region.
Oh, God, please bring back the replacement refs. I need that like I need air. So bad the last time we went through that. TD, any final thoughts before we get to show and tell?
No, I think, we pretty much covered it all. I say this, guy to watch that I think can really help, especially in sub packages, like when they go dime. Dan Cruikshank, he's my guy to watch this year. I really like his game, liked him at Arizona. He played a lot of dime linebacker in addition to corner. So he's someone to watch, especially in their sub package.
Big Dane Cruikshank fan here too. Absolutely.
He's got a very interesting skill set, and like all of these guys, hugely versatile and an ace special teams player in a way that you need him to be, since David Fluellen, master of the special teams, will no longer be on the roster. But now it is the thing. Go ahead.
He's a thumper, dude. He's a thumper. That's what I like about him. He is
big boy.
Physical as all day long. He's physical.
That's a big boy. But now it is time for the thing that everybody is really here for. It is time for my man, Rhett Bryan, to show off what he has found within the depths of his house, his garage, his man cave where we see behind him, if you view with us on YouTube, a Steve McNair, Eddie George banner, and a Grantland Rice Murfreesboro, Tennessee flyer. That is something I was not expecting.
Yes,
Rhett, what have you brought the people for
All right.
today's edition of Show and Tell?
3 lovely photos and then a recently acquired Titans rookie card that I want to show off.
Okay.
First of all, first photo, this is taken the week of January 30th, 2000, Super Bowl 34, and there is Miss Anna Mae Bullock, Nutbush, Tennessee, a.k.a. Tina Turner. She was the pregame entertainment for Super Bowl 34. And I was super excited to be able to be a part of that press conference. I love Tina Turner, always have.
Rolling down the river.
One of the best concerts I ever saw at Bridgestone Arena was her about 7-8 months later. Joe Cocker opened up for her. She played for 2.5 hours. It was fantastic.
Rhett got a little soul to him. What's next?
Oh, I love Tina. All right. This is April 2006. And this is at Radio City Music Hall, 20 minutes after the Tennessee Titans with the 3rd overall pick. And I'm interviewing Vincent Paul Young Jr. from the University of Texas.
Outstanding. I don't know whose getup is more noteworthy, yours or Young's.
And this is I think 2009, maybe 2010. He raised the flag that night as the 12th Titan, the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Woo! That is an exceptional picture.
I interviewed him for Titans Countdown that night. I'll never, ever forget it. It's fantastic. One of my favorite nights in that stadium. And then recently, I just got this in the mail a couple days ago. This is a 2020 Playoff Absolute Football Darrington Evans autograph rookie number /99.
That is something that you had to have gotten right off the presses. I didn't even know we had the rookie cards out yet.
Yeah, and it shows him in his college uniform. The ones with their pro uniforms from the rookie photo shoot are already coming out. But this is one of the first ones that came out right after the draft. And it's number 84/99. I'm glad to put this one in the collection. I'm excited to see what this guy does with two-tone blue this year.
Very much so. I think he's going to be an exceptional compliment to Derrick Henry. What's up, TD?
I got a couple of things. I got an idea.
Oh, look at it. He will not be outdone.
I love it. Right here. Look at that guy right there.
Woo!
Wow.
Cheney University of Pennsylvania student ID.
Yeah.
Young TD. Get it just a little bit closer to the camera. You have some facial hair. Look at
that.
You. Got the braids going.
That's a bad man.
And then this is another one. This was a bank card I found from 1998.
Wow.
A bank
card. First of all, it warms my heart that Turron has participated in Show and Tell. And then to see young vintage Turron, that's big time.
You know
that's
why?
Really cool.
You know how it's vintage, TD. You got the Jalen Rose haircut there, like it's painted on in the second picture.
Oh yeah, this one here, yeah.
Oh, look at that. That is a young stud, without question. Show and Tell. This is Turron is on the pod. Turron must be included in the Show and Tell. Now the burden is upon Turron. The next time we get this particular meeting of the minds together. Yeah, see, you blew the call, Turron, because now I was just going to let you sit back and cruise. You couldn't have it easy, could you, big dog?
All right.
They are Rhett, Bryan of 104.5 The Zone, Titans Radio, the OTP official Titans podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe. Turron Davenport of ESPN.com at @TDavenport_NFL is where you follow him on the socials. The Talking with TD podcast. Some of the best stuff if you are interested in the mechanics of football and if you are interested in the best explanation, best play breakdowns out there on the market, you know that there's one place you can go, and that is the Talking with TD podcast. Boys, I appreciate the time as all. Listen, no, I appreciate you guys working for free on a regular basis. So you get all the plugs out of me you want. I'm happy to do it as long as you show up once or twice a month to hang out with me on the pod. I always enjoy it, boys. Thanks.
Glad to do it.
Yes, sir.
Back here, 615 Sessions podcast, post-COVID edition, or so they're telling me by Wednesday, apparently. The first pod I have done since contracting the Rona. We have much to discuss across the sports world, and we're taping out of order. So we come now to our Preds and college football conversation because two things happened of tremendous import over the course of the weekend and certainly the last 24 hours. We're talking about college football. The Preds got bounced from Edmonton 3-1 in their series against the Arizona Coyotes. We have Braden Gall looking incredibly uninterested, and Adam Vingan of The Athletic. Braden Gall, of course, of Athlon Sports and Sirius XM ESPNU Radio. Boys, it's a pleasure to see you under digital circumstances.
I think we're going to name this podcast From Rona to Zona.
Oh, no, why are you smiling after that? It's just a dead.
Adam, you don't have children. You don't have an excuse to make that joke. I have an excuse to make that joke.
From Rona to Zona, baby.
It's literally just sitting on my lap like a dead podcast fish. I don't know what to do with it. But at that point, yes, Adam.
Guzzle beer out of it. That's
here for your fiery hot takes on the end of the Nashville Predators and also your terrible, terrible jokes. All right, Vingan. What the hell? Nashville Predators 2019-2020. What the hell?
Yeah, that's a good tagline for this season, as appropriate as we can have on this podcast. Well, perhaps it could be a bit more vulgar, but you know me. I don't go too far on the vulgarity.
Coward.
But yeah, look, I would agree with what the players said after the game on Friday, after they were eliminated in overtime of Game 4, that they put forth a much more competitive effort against the Arizona Coyotes than they did against the Dallas Stars last year. But I just think at this point, it's fallen on deaf ears with this fan base and myself personally. We've heard enough of this. Well, this group will just need another go at it. Everything will work out. I think we've heard that enough. I wrote perhaps the most scathing column I have ever written after that game. In which
you blowtorched him, Vingan. You blowtorched him. I was very, very proud. I read that column, by the way, well worth your subscription, as well as many other great journalists working at theathletic.com. I read that, and it literally, you guys can see that my eyebrows are lighter, literally singed my eyebrows off. Well,
what did you do to your eyebrows?
I got pretty messed up on cough syrup over the course of my COVID quarantine. My barber normally does my eyebrows, but I tried it myself, and I took way too much off.
Wow.
Yeah, super tough scene.
Wow.
Good to know.
Not to distract from your point. Proceed.
It's very Charlie the Villanueva of you. Very strange.
Such an
Was that
obscure
alopecia?
reference.
Is that what it's called?
No alopecia jokes. It's a serious disease.
Okay.
Continue with your point.
Anyway,
Go Huskies.
I wrote in that story that the Predators are drifting towards irrelevance. And what I meant by that is, in professional sports, there is no worse place a team can be than stuck in the middle. And that's where the Predators are. They're not good enough to win a Stanley Cup as constructed. They're not bad enough to tank, even though tonight, we're recording this in the afternoon, tonight they do have a 12.5% chance of landing the number 1 pick in the NHL draft, which would change a lot of this conversation, to be sure. But under normal circumstances, they are not bad enough to rebuild their team through high draft picks. So they're really just stuck in the middle. They're just sort of there. And for a team that was built to win championships in the near term, frankly, that's unacceptable. So to hear Ryan Ellis say after the game that there's a new sense of belief in that dressing room, great. They can believe that, but we shouldn't believe that. We have no reason to believe that. They've given us plenty of reason not to believe it over the past few years. So that's where I stand on the local professional hockey team.
Braden, where do you place the most blame? If we're going to assign blame, if we're going to play the blame game, it's one of my favorite games. Whom do you blame the most for them? Because it's not just this fart in the wind of a playoff qualifying series that we watched, where sports in Middle Tennessee, or professional sports in Middle Tennessee, is back for 5 days or 4 games, and then it's done. It's out of our lives just as quickly as it came back. Where do you place the greatest amount of blame for the Preds inconsistent regular season and then what we saw post-pandemic stop?
Obviously, Pecorine. It's clearly his fault.
Burn it down.
No, listen. This is a problem with the media industry writ large, which is we have to find a singular thing to blame, and that's just not the case.
That's what I'm going to do.
David Poyle owns this. It hangs around his neck because he's the one who put it all together and kept it all together through many years, listening to players and doing what they're supposed to do and giving them the chance to do what they asked them to do. It hangs around the necks of the most expensive players on the team because they maybe did or didn't. Now, like Ryan Johansson was really good in the series, but playoff Johansson is great when he wants to be and when he's focused, and maybe in a bubble it might be better for Ryan Johansson. But I think, all the players that make the most amount of money, they already changed the coach, so you can't blame Lavi on this one. So I think one of the worst things that could have happened is they appear to have been the better team pretty clearly and to have outplayed Arizona and to have lost. Like that, from a fan's perspective, I think was one of the worst things that could have happened to him. So I don't buy into the whole window thing. Like the window is open or closed or whatever. I maybe used to subscribe to that, but I think when you can win a Stanley Cup with a rookie goaltender and firing your coach and being in last place in January the way the Blues did, I think the window talk is sort of silly. I think you can win a cup if you get the right collection of ingredients together at the right time and you play your ass off. And that's I think there are too many, I don't want to say soft, but there's too many high skill guys. David Poyle went too hard after the high skill players. And when you have guys like Granlund and Duchesne and Kyle Turris, who are all sort of in the same mold, very skilled, very handsy, very toolsy, but they're not going to go stand in the dirty areas and make shit happen. So I think, Craig Smith's the contract for him's out. Granlund, there's going to be some different pieces that are going to be gone, and that's probably a good thing. The core nucleus is still the same people we're going to be talking about next year, though. Unless they make a huge trade, it's still going to be David Poyle and the most expensive players on the team that have to figure out a way to find success.
Well, yeah, because the money's doled out against what's going to be a flat cap next year, Vingan.
Right.
Yes, and to Braden's point, the one thing that I feel like this team is missing, and here's where I'll use my one bit of vulgarity per appearance on this.
Just say shit. You're so pretentious about cussing. Just say shit.
The Predators need an asshole, and what I mean by that is, look, there are still plenty of Predators fans that have a torrid love affair with James Neal, and that leaving him exposed in the expansion draft 3 years ago was the biggest mistake, and if he were still here, things would be different. No, James Neal is past his prime. And to a point, PK Subban, to an extent, though not to the same extent as James Neal, was also a bit of an asshole in terms of he plays with an edge, and he knows the right things to say and when to say them. He knows how to get under other players' skin. And the Predators need a player like that. And you think of some of the players on other teams like that, like Tom Wilson or Brad Marchand or Matthew Tkachuk, players who piss off their opponents but also are incredibly productive. Those players don't grow on trees. That's what this team needs. There are too many quote-unquote nice guys on this team. Yep. They don't really they have the closest thing they have is Austin Watson, but Austin Watson is not an offensive dynamo. Maybe he'll get you 8 to 10 goals a year. But I'm talking about they need a player who will score 20 to 25 goals a year, who will get in front of the net, that will draw a crowd every time he's on the ice. That's what this team needs. That's what they haven't had since James Neal left. And if I were to pick a type of player that they should get somehow this offseason, that's probably the number one archetype I would target.
Yeah, and there's no easy solution, right? I saw, Vingan, you wrote about why they're better off just buying out Kyle Turris at this point because you're not going to get anybody to take that contract, and it would be a blessing from above if you're a Preds fan for the Seattle Kraken to come in here and poach him off your roster in the expansion draft. But
they're not that dumb, though.
Yeah, exactly. It's just everybody saw the same thing that we were watching, the rest of the National Hockey League saw. And it's just not an easy way to maneuver around. So if we'll end the Preds discussion on this because I was expecting to spend more time on them over the course of the next couple of weeks, but apparently that's not going to be the case. If you had one area, it can be across the organization. We'll go around the room. Braden, we'll start with you. One area that needs to get it right, that most needs to be corrected during this offseason, I don't know what this offseason is going to look like. I don't know what their when they come back is going to look like based on the schedule that we're currently on with COVID. But one thing that they need to handle during this offseason.
They need more rectums, apparently. Like, that's what they need. Like, I totally agree with Vingan. It's not the defense core. It's not the goaltending. I don't think you need to, ask David Poile to step down. They've already made the coaching change. If there's a couple of tweaks with the forwards, like we talked about, letting Smith, Granlund go, buying out Turris, whatever, there needs to be someone who doesn't give a shit. Like, and that person needs to – that's what PK Subban was. That's, like Corey Perry is that guy, right? Like, you can name guys – now he's past his prime, I get that, but there's guys that just don't care. And that's the player you need on the front six. That's to me. And I don't know how you make that happen. I don't know who that guy is. Vingan, this is your world. But you need someone that's going to stir it up and is going to piss people off, and it's got to be a top six guy. They've got a great third line. Like, if you brought Craig Smith back and paired him with Nick Bonino and Rocco Grimaldi, I think you feel pretty good about that line. It's the second one that's the one that's kind of soft, and you can't let Duchesne go because the mayor gave him a guitar. So you got to –
The ex-mayor.
That's true. That's my bad. The interim mayor, I should say.
John Cooper, his hands are clean on that one. So I'm just saying.
Fair point. He's got other issues.
I would much. I want so badly to have that podcast.
Can John Cooper lend Buck some of his eyebrows, though?
He's got some to spare, man. Yeah. Now I'm
That's
okay.
What I'm saying.
Like, genetically, I'm not worried about it. I'm Arab. The best thing that I do is hair. I do.
John Cooper looks like the Utz owl on the potato chip.
I will also agree. I will also agree with Buck that the best thing he does is hair. So I think it's again Granlund and Turris. Get those guys out of the top six, and then figure out your top six with some attitude. I mean, that's the shortest answer.
Vingan, before you address this, and then we'll get you out of here before we start talking college football, and you have declined our invitation to participate in that particular conversation.
I just think that the conversation would be much less intelligent if I'm a part of it. I'm actually doing your audience a favor.
And I respect the self-awareness in that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
The idea that they need an asshole in the locker room, Braden mentioned PK. Was there any legitimacy to him chafing, for lack of a better word, with that locker room based on just who he was? You saw a little bit of that. Players like PK are easy to target with that. Is that a real thing that locker room experienced?
I can't speak to that completely, but, PK Subban, as a player, we know what he's like. We know how he sits versus the typical NHL hockey player. And
why I liked him so much.
Yes, well, that's why a lot of people like him so much. But can I definitively say that his former teammates were happy to see him go? I can't speak to that. But to your previous question about what needs to be looked at, what might need to change, sort of what I'm going to bring up a point that Braden brought up. I do think that it is time to take a good, hard look at David Poile as general manager. Now, does that mean that he needs to be removed from that position? No. But I do believe that for the first time, and maybe a long while, he has been the general manager of this organization for 23 years. He's been a GM in the league since 1982. I think for the first time in a long time, the Predators need to take a look at David Poile. As I wrote in the column, to me, it seems as if though he has lost his proverbial fastball. I do believe that David Poile is still very much a capable GM in this league. I don't think the game has passed him by, so to speak, but you look at all of the moves that he has made over the past couple of years, and to me, at this point, it is not a coincidence that all of these previously productive players have come to Nashville and suddenly started to suck. It's one thing if it's just Kyle Turris or just Mikhail Granlund, but it's Turris and Granlund and Ryan Hartman and Wayne Simmons. It's not, for just to name a few, it's not a coincidence at this point. Now, like I said, does that mean that David Poile needs to be kicked upstairs and maintain the title of president of hockey operations and have someone else become the GM and operate on the day-to-day? I don't know. But I do believe that for the first time in a very long time, David Poile, to me, has lost the benefit of the doubt. And I do believe that is something that the higher-ups in the Predators organization need to at least research and consider during the offseason.
Sometimes that's just how you have to do the analysis. It's, they're good at their job until they show you otherwise. And after a while, you're right, it stops becoming coincidence, and then it starts becoming a trend. But Vingan doing the easy thing, taking out the old man, the people, the Preds, or the guy that the Preds fans love the most, not named Pecorine. A very strong take by Adam Vingan of The Athletic. You can read his column and all the work that he will be doing on the Nashville Predators at theathletic.com. You can follow him on the socials at Adam Vingan. You are now excused. Thank you for your time.
All right. Have fun talking about college football.
Oh, God.
Now it's just
from Rona to Zona. Remember
get
that.
Out of here. You go from
right.
Rona to Zona. The hell off my Zoom screen.
I didn't have Rona. You did.
I still do for at least another 7 days, according to the state. Now we talk college football with Braden Gall of Athlon Sports and SiriusXM. All right, your world professionally, it seems, is ending around us.
Yeah.
Where would you like to start?
Cool.
You think that Big Ten will be playing college football this season by the time we end this podcast?
At the risk of being called a Corona bro who's peddling fear porn, I don't think anybody's playing. But that's, again, I think a smart way to start the conversation is to plan for the worst and hope for the best. Even Greg Sankey today said, we don't know if we're going to play. We're going to try, but we don't know. Sounds a lot like Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, a couple of weeks ago when they announced they were canceling the non-conference games, when he said, we still need fans to be prepared to think that we're not going to play maybe, but we're going to try. And I think that's what's happening.
So let's take people, before you expand, let's take people through the timeline that has transpired over the last, let's say, 72 hours. Because last week, when I did my last show, it was interconference play for the SEC. Everybody's happy because you have a schedule for Tennessee. You have the new SEC schedule coming out. And then over the course of the next couple days, what happened?
So the MAC, the first conference officially to cancel its entire season, and that is for sort of one collective reason that's a lot of maybe smaller reasons underneath. But if you think about it, those budgets are already very close to the margins. And what you're doing when you're playing during a pandemic is you're actually increasing costs of across the board. You have to pay testing and protocols and additional personnel and all the different things you have to do. So you're increasing costs while decreasing revenue because you've taken games off the books that would have paid for all of this and no fans. I don't know how many fans go to an Akron Zips game, but whatever. It's still lost revenue. So it doesn't normally work when you're already razor thin on the margins and you increase cost and decrease revenue. So most Group of 5 leagues are going to be stuck in that same boat. So the MAC canceled its season on Saturday. And again, I don't even think you need really, Buck, a timeline for all of this because they're all just having day-to-day conversations. Like every league right now is trying to figure out a way to get around one issue. And it is not coronavirus. It is not COVID-19. Their one issue is that the people that are making all of them money are not employees. That is the issue. And I've been on your show probably 4 times now. And every time I said, how do you handle the legal liability of all of 6,500 kids for Power 5 conferences and all of their family situations? Unless their health can be collectively bargained by legal representation, which would be the NCAA admitting that they are employees and not amateurs, this will not happen. And that's not me being I'm not trying to peddle fear porn here to people. Like, I'm just trying to tell you the reality of the situation. The seasons will get canceled, not because people are morally going to do the right thing. They want the money. But it's because I don't think there's a legal path there. I don't know. The liability issue has always been the issue for me from the beginning on this, is how do you take care of the liability when parents and kids are involved?
Sure. You built a business model that was, over Mark Emmert's dead body going to pay the workforce. It turns out when you need the workforce to cooperate, you legally can't get their cooperation based on the way that this is going down.
Well, and to your point, and sorry, to your point about the timeline now on what is it, Monday? I don't know. It's a flat circle.
We are taping this Tuesday podcast currently Monday afternoon at 3:08 p.m.
So the big development Monday, of course, is all these conferences are meeting to decide whether, how long can they pretend that there's a season. But the players are now, and the coaches, of course, and all the ADs are all now unified in their we want to play efforts, right? We want to play, we want to play. And I respect that. That's great. I think it's great that a bunch of players want to, they're okay choosing the risk reward in their lives. And that is American individualism at its finest. Like, that is the beauty of our country, is you get to smoke a pack a day if you want to and die of lung cancer. That's your choice, dude. Like, fine. You want to eat Big Macs all day and drink milkshakes and die of a heart attack? That's on you. That's America. You're allowed to do that. So I'm cool with players having this right to say all this stuff.
A lot of people do that, by the way.
Right. And the problem is, which is also another issue around coronavirus. Which
another
is
day. Save it for the John Cooper podcast. Save it for the Cooper podcast.
Maybe if we weren't such fat assholes, maybe we wouldn't all be dying of coronavirus. But anyway.
But they could play on the second line for the Preds.
You're
a fat asshole. We need you out there. Get on the ice.
Get out there and be a dick. So I think, again, they are allowed to do all of that. But even if they are, and they choose to, it doesn't eliminate legal liability from the person running all of this, which would be, Alabama or Tennessee or Georgia or Ohio State or whatever. They are still on the hook for whatever happens. And if one kid ends up in a hospital and dies, one kid, you are looking at a whole huge shitstorm that nobody knows what we look like as a sport coming out the end of that. So it's not, it's not about being timid or soft or scared. It's about being smart, but it's also about legal liability. And the players want to play. I get it. My 3-year-old wants to eat birthday cake every morning for breakfast. And I can't look at her and be like, what do you think of the long-term health ramifications of eating a birthday cake every single day? She just tweets back at me like, let me eat cake, and then politicians get involved that never cared about cake ever before, and now they're tweeting about cake.
Right. That's it's, and it's it's the same thing as any other subject matter, it seems, in our society today. One side is going to take it up for their cause, rightly or wrongly, and then you weaponize it as an argument against the other side for no other means but to create argument.
And when it serves them. And this is what I didn't like about not to bring up the Tennessee coaching search, but what I don't like about college athletics, one of the worst parts about college sports and football, is selective moral outrage. You pick and choose when you get to be on your moral high horse to support XYZ cause when it suits you best. And I'm actually I'm learning from you, Buck. I want all these politicians. I am here for the politicians tweeting their support of athletes. Give it all to me. Give me all the tweets about how you are standing with the athletes and you're pro athlete and you're here for the athlete and let's go athlete. Because when you tell them to shut up and dribble next semester, I'm going to bring all these tweets back to you and say, no, wait a second. What about when you were, battling for re-election and you needed football because your base likes it? It's just so transparent and hypocrisy. It's just, it's very frustrating. I'm very frustrated.
Listen, frustration does not even begin to describe the emotions of the last, six months at this point. As a business, where do they go from here? Because I am of the opinion that, rightly or wrongly, the players understanding their actual value. It took a global pandemic for the players in college to understand that the organizations, that the universities do not make money without their participation, without their willingness to coalesce without a paycheck. Now you are seeing in the hashtag We Want to Play movement or in the Pac-12 players statement on the Players Tribune making demands and saying, if these are not met, we will not play. Whatever it is, it's unionization in college football. The thing that they have been fighting against, the thing that the NCAA has been fighting against since its existence, the thing that its purpose is really to stamp out. How is there a way that college football adapts? Is there a roadmap for that at all? Because I think that this totally changes everything that we know about the sport.
And here's the really interesting angle to all of this, because, and I don't know if this is optimism or, putting shining up a turd. I'm not really sure here, but I do think that through all of those changes you just laid out that we're going to discuss here, which I think are all, we can have a really, intelligent discussion about it. I don't think your experience as a college football fan is going to change. I just don't. If you're an Alabama fan and you're watching Alabama football in 2011 or 2015 or 2026, and the players happen to be making a few dollars off Instagram posts, or they have better health care after they're done playing football, they make a few extra dollars from God knows what sort of revenue, or maybe there's a way to put it into a fund, a retirement fund post-graduation that you get. Maybe they got extra degrees. Maybe they got to visit with an NFL agent before being selected in the draft, and maybe they got to come back to school, or maybe they got to transfer, oh my God, without having to sit out. Like, your life isn't any different. Like, I think through all of that stuff that these athletes are asking for, your life as a Tennessee fan, sitting down on Saturdays to watch them play Kentucky or Florida or Georgia, is not going to be any different. No. It literally has no effect on you, the fan, getting to enjoy your favorite team play football. And I think that's what's really important to keep in mind here is, and to add to your pandemic, it wasn't just a pandemic. It was also a racial awakening as well in a workforce that is like 80% black or whatever. So it's you put those two together, you combine it with name, image, and likeness, which is also giving the athletes more power to understand their value. And you put all these forces together. And I actually think the coach who leans into all of that stuff the hardest is going to be the coach that wins the fastest coming out of all of this. PJ Fleck at Minnesota is doing a good job of this. Strangely enough, old boy special teams coordinator from a high school in Alabama, old boy Jeremy Pruitt, that cannot buy suits that fit him, is actually very much on the front end of this. He's cool with players getting out and speaking up about racial injustice. He's cool with he gets it, man. And Jeremy Pruitt, I think, is actually on the front end of this stuff. And so he who embraces all of that is going to, I think, have a better chance to win. And as a fan, don't worry about it. Like, it's like an NFL fan saying, "Oh, you should sign Derrick Henry. I'm worried about the cost." Like, well, it's not your money. Like, it's not like, who cares if the athletes get treated a little bit better? I mean, how does it affect your life? Like, it just doesn't. So I think it's really important to remember that, if you're sitting down to watch your favorite team, it's going to be the same. If you're a Kentucky basketball fan and all those one and doners don't go to Kentucky, let's say Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, none of those guys, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, none of those guys went to Kentucky. You think they would have gone, like, people were not going to go to Kentucky games? Like, no, of course they're still going to games. They're just going to be, their teams won't be as cool, but they're still going to be going to games. So
now, if they change the racist name on the arena, then they're not going to the games.
Right.
That's a different matter entirely.
That's too far. That's too far, Buck. But you get my point. Like, none of this stuff is going to affect you as a fan. Just let it happen. Don't worry about it. Just let the athletes work it out and enjoy your games when we get it finally in August of 2021.
God, don't do this to me. We just got so close, and it was just, it's like the Preds. It's just enough to tease you and make you stick around for a little longer. Just that college football
it did feel good for a second there to watch some like real sports, and it did feel good when the conferences threw us some red meat to like look at schedules. Oh, Tennessee, Georgia got the easy way. Like, it gave us some red meat to chew on, but all it is kicking the can. They're all kicking the can down the road as long as they can to try to pretend that there's going to be a season. And I hope there is. I hope they figure it out. I'm hoping for the best, but I'm expecting the worst.
Odds are against them. Braden Gall of Athlon Sports. You can rate, review, and subscribe to the Cover 2 podcast that he does on a regular basis. He penned an open letter to college football that you can listen to in the most recent edition. You can hear him also on SiriusXM from time to time on ESPN Radio. Appreciate your time, my brother, and I'm sure we'll talk at some point whether there's college football or not.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is just to not get sucked into a meaningless debate about stuff. Like, just be.
What else am I going to do with my time? It's the only reason I log onto Twitter in the morning. I'm there to fight with people.
Dude, my wife looks at me and he's like, "What? Why are you still on that machine?" And I'm like, "I can't stop. It's like dopamine in my brain." But you can still have good, smart, intelligent, rational, cautious, productive discussions on Twitter. You don't just have to fling fecal matter at each other. And that's why we're here. That's why we're not going to have football, is because we could not just openly have a complicated conversation. We had to yell at each other about it. And that's the way they wanted it. So that's how it ended up.
That's true. And that's where we will find ourselves in the fall of 2020. Do you have your topic, which you're prepared to espouse about?
No, this was also, I don't know, what am I supposed to be talking about?
I sent you a text an hour ago and
I've
said,
been I've been babysitting grandkids.
Okay,
Seriously.
then don't worry about it. It's recording. This is perfect because now we're in the podcast. Back here, 615 Sessions Podcast, A to Z Sports, A to Z Sports, Nashville.com. My mother is here. She's pissed because I've been patronizing to her about the Zoom call. She's pissed because she feels unprepared. She's pissed because we do things last minute around here. We're very happy to have her regardless. I'm sorry. I have not yet ceded my time. Hi, Mom.
Hello, honey.
People can see your face. You know that, right? You know the tone.
Hi, honey. Hi.
Yeah. My mother is here for our 100th episode of the 615 Sessions podcast. We felt no better way to top things off than just, general espousings. Because typically, Mom, what I had texted you, if you had responded to your son who is currently sick and dying of illnesses that this great country is affected by, the pandemic has reached my home. I'm struggling. I'm short of breath. And here you sit dismissing my text messages, even though your son has come down with COVID. So I appreciate all your motherly duties there.
I've checked in with you, and I'm appropriately maternal.
Okay, how would you describe appropriately maternal? Because I think that could stay. I would be fascinated to hear your definition of appropriately maternal.
Well, I was very alarmed when you told me you got tested. That you tested positive, and then I was sort of resigned because we'll all get it at some point. And then I was suspicious about how well you've really been, taking the protocols seriously. If you've been, masking up and wiping down surfaces, et cetera. But it is what it is, as some people's favorite.
Mom, if I'm not gonna hold you back here. Just know that if you get political, I have to offer equal time to somebody, and I don't know many people on the other side of you.
Go for it. We'll stick to COVID.
Well, one inherent the other. What does your button say, Mother?
It says, "I will vote."
You will vote. Now, Indiana has not yet voted. Tennessee has voted. So
what? I'm talking about November 3rd, sweetheart.
I'm talking about primary elections.
Yes, no. I'm talking about all and every elections. It's every citizen's responsibility. So since I'm doing this pro bono, I figured I could, get in my cause.
Yeah, the people did not know that my mother requires a talent fee to do the podcast. That's why she only makes an appearance once a year. No, I thought this would be fun to do because rarely people seem to enjoy the dynamic between us, even though they don't know you and they don't get to hear from you on a regular basis. This is, in fact, something that my bosses suggest because apparently your stylings on finding out that Karen, your name, was being used as a slur across the country. We have many things to discuss. You abandoned my sister and my stepfather on a 10-day road trip across America. So if you want to talk about people violating the social distancing and travel protocols, the pot meet kettle. So we will talk about that. We will talk about all of these things. But let's again start with you. You avoided the question. This is expert diplomacy by you. How do you define adequate mothering, or whatever the phrase you use?
Appropriately maternal was what I used.
Appropriately maternal. How would one define appropriately maternal?
Well, in this case, since you're in Nashville and we're in Indiana, I had to call in, make sure you had all the information, and that you had somebody who could, in case you got delirious and with fever, somebody who would be able to pick your body up off the floor. And, after that, then just going to have to let it ride.
That seems to be the case all over the country. Just let it ride. You'll be pleased to know this is actually interesting because you are somebody who abhors college sports and college football anyway. Maybe that's the way. Is that a misrepresentation?
I was only objecting to the segmentation, and I don't abhor anything. I just think sports in general take way too much of a priority in our lives.
Okay, and that's a fair statement. So I don't know if you've seen this. What's happening here in college football is college football conferences have started to cancel their seasons. They've started with the smaller conferences, the bigger ones like the SEC here and the Big Ten where Indiana plays, and the Pac-12 and the Big 12. The main Power 5 conferences, as we call them in sports, have not yet canceled, but the smaller schools have begun to do so. How do you feel about them taking that action at present? Do you have any opinions on that?
Well, you know, given the moniker Karen, I'm expected and do have opinions on everything. So
well, you use your Karen powers for good, and we'll talk about Karen here in a second. What is Karen Reising's opinion on the lack of college football? That college football probably going to be canceled this year. How do you feel about that?
Well, I know it's very sad. I mean, and I am very sad for all concerned, of course. But given where we are in terms of our level of affection and the lack of adequate testing, it's inevitable. It's too bad. We just have to, but it will be on the other side of this next year with remedies and vaccines, and then things will move forward. But it's very sad. It's a big part of everybody's life.
Well, not necessarily. Like, you are somebody who probably didn't notice the absence of sports over the past 5 months. And there's nothing wrong with that. Your life is no different. The fact that sports have not been played for the past 5 months and are just now starting to make their reemergence. No,
but I'm aware of how it affects everybody else. And
listen, since when do you play the good guy on this stuff? You were absolutely ripping college athletics the last time we talked about this.
No, only in the sense that they need to be paid, because I feel like the college schedules are so full of games and the time commitment that the kids don't get a proper education, which, as you know, to me is the cornerstone of all economic security and social stability, is a good education. So that should be a priority. That's what I
totally reasonable. But when the colleges, because this is an interesting way that it bears out, the colleges have built an economic model that does not allow them to function without football, that does not allow their athletic departments to function because of football, that does not allow for resources across the campus to be generated because of football, not just the support of men's and women's soccer or lacrosse or swimming and diving, but the ability of athletics, especially for SEC schools, to generate funds for buildings across campus and to go back into the university's coffers. This is a situation where football inherently leads to a lack of football leads to these universities, essentially, because of the way that they spend their money on an annual basis, not banking any of it. Alabama is pleading cash poor. And that is one of the biggest revenue generators in all of sports, from merchandising on down. So how do you kind of balance the lack of college football that there will probably be with how that inherently is going to affect education, because the colleges have, sold out?
Again, because I don't know enough truly in detail about all of the financial dynamics, I shouldn't comment, but then that doesn't stop most people. So, it
wouldn't stop a real Karen.
It was, they were able, football is the overwhelming fan favorite, so people pay, and the colleges, took it and ran with it. And, college costs, the whole college infrastructure in terms of cost anyway is ridiculous and not and overblown. And so football, knocking one of the legs out from under the way too heavy expenses that college, the cost of college now. They're going to have to readjust. They're going to have to slim down, and it's going to have to be focused more on academics, which is, again, that's what's going to get people jobs is an education, especially in the tech economy that we have, and that is going to just be expedited and accelerated by this.
Even if it costs me my job? I went to college.
Well, honey.
There's no football. I don't have a job, Mom.
What did I tell you? I said, there's great jobs in the government, in the intelligence services and the State Department. I tried to get you, law school. So, am I feeling just a little bit of satisfaction at that? No, I'm not, and I don't want you to lose your job.
Are you admitting you are in front of an audience right now? People are seeing this. People are going to watch this.
You're going to cut all this out anyway. What are you
just publicly lobbied for me to lose my job so you could say I told you so?
No.
What?
I hypothetically.
That makes you what exposes your true colors as an actual Karen. So walk people through this, because this is pretty funny. The idea that you had no idea that this phenomenon was all over social media. Your name is Karen. Your name is being used as a slur across the country for people who are strident and overbearing, often white and middle-aged. I will not classify you in any of these ways for fear of my own safety, although I should, for you just publicly lobbying for me to lose my job so you could say I told you so. This is hugely vindictive. But so how have you experienced the Karen phenomenon now that you understand what the hell is going on social media?
Well, because I'm not on social media.
Yeah.
Of course, I was oblivious to it.
I was about to say, do you want me to plug your social media, by the way? I can't, you are politically involved, so I can't plug your politically involved causes on social media, but I can plug your personal social media if you're trying to direct people
I don't
messaging.
use it,
Okay.
But then I have the luxury of not using it, given that I'm retired and so, but yeah, I was appalled and offended, and I get it though.
But you said that the name is being used against Karens who are on the wrong side of many of the issues that we are facing as a country, given the racial climate, given the political hostility that is going on, given everything that's being provoked by COVID. The name is being used as for the wrong side, by your own admission. Have you experienced any run-ins where people are scared of you going full Karen? Because I've been on the receiving end of that for 27 years of my life. I know that it's very much like the videos that people are observing, except with fewer submachine guns.
No, I'm not that kind of Karen. That's not where I want to be. That's not where I am. So, like I said, I'm going to change my name to, Mika or Abishola or something that, that puts me where I want to be on the progressive side of all issues, whether, environment and diversity and healthcare.
Yeah.
But, again.
But so have you seen any of the videos of Karens?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
so
went and watched them.
Okay. So how many did you watch? How did, you gotta lay this out for the people. This is an audio medium, Mom.
Well, to be honest, and then this will go right to my vanity. I was just glad when one showed up and she looked so young.
What's beeping in the background? She's running off of the camera to go silence something that nobody else in the house can hear here on the 615 sessions. I see this interview was going to go one of two ways, and I'm not sure what's beeping at you.
Well, it's, and for the record, I'm glad this is being recorded for posterity because I'm actually cooking. So
cooking what?
Stuffed peppers with chickpeas and goat cheese. Thank you very much.
Okay. See, this is an excellent transition. It proves that you're better at this job than me, because cooking in my lifetime with you is not something that was a real thing.
Don't go there.
What? Don't go where? Where am I going to go? Am I going to go to the rotisserie chicken that I would eat at Sam's Club with a side of chocolate Easter eggs? Or shall I go to, any variety of Morningstar products that I've been pumped full of over the course of my life that I believe have lingering side effects? That's why my eyebrows are gone, Mom.
Don't blame your side effects on me, buddy.
No. But so walk people before you got distracted. Walk people through the viewing of the Karen videos, and where did you find them? How did you find them? How did you experience them?
Well, again, given my age, I forget everything that, I have no memory. I have no recall, but
Nobody knows your age.
I went on and, first of all, and I am going to lose the regard of most of your viewing audience when I say I really love Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago. So I started there, and then I went to, and then other stuff came up, and, condescending and patronizing and entitled, definitely. All of those were characteristics that they displayed, and I had to admit
that
they made me uncomfortable, because that's, I have to own up to some of that. So I'm trying to be, what did you
some of it? What do you mean some of it?
Well, I'm moderating my attitude, and don't you wish that your father was here to hear that?
Yeah, no kidding. I think that every time I see one of these Karen videos come across my timeline, that I'm reliving a piece of my childhood, or in some form or fashion, not necessarily directed at me, but perhaps some unsuspecting telephone solicitor that called between the hours of 5 and 7 on the receiving end of that furor that I saw so many times.
As a single working parent, the last thing that I needed to do when I'm trying to put, admittedly were less than stellar meals together at dinner time, the last thing I wanted to do was talk to some.
You can cuss. It's a podcast, Mom.
Individual. Well, trying to sell me some, car insurance or something. So yes, I was very rude and hung up. I admit to that. and that attitude has extended to other things inappropriately, and often made you cringe from the time you were old enough to be aware.
I fear confrontation. These are lasting effects. I can't sit on a toilet the right way, and I fear confrontation. These are direct results from my childhood. What? Listen, this is the 100th episode. You can't yell at me. You have to explain that story to the people right now. I will
never do this again without strictly delineating what topics are off.
Should have checked your text messages before the pod, Mom. Should have done it. You had the opportunity.
The grandmother thing.
This segment is typically called 5 Good Minutes. Okay, so, and yes, it's wonderful that you're doing the grandmother thing. For those listening at home, those are not my illegitimate children that she is babysitting, nor my sisters. So tell the people the story of why it took me some time to learn how to sit on a toilet properly.
No, I will not.
Either you do it or I'm going to do it.
Drew, I'm going to pull a Donald
Nobody
Trump
knows who you're.
Walk away from the podium if you persist in this line. I felt very badly about that. Stop. No, that is not an appropriate topic. I'm not.
It's a very, very appropriate topic. Mom, you are my mother. You are on this podcast. It is meant to be self-deprecating. This is not a shot at you. I'm simply asking you to explain to the people the reference that I made. If you do not, I will do it.
No, I'm not going to know. I'm stop.
What do you mean stop? Mom, this is terrible radio we're doing right now. You have to deliver. You have to be willing to lean in. No, I should have paid the talent fee. All right, we'll run that back for another edition. Okay, so people don't understand. You and I share something. We share many things in common. But you recently took a 10-day road trip just to get the hell out of quarantine, like we all do. We all are very cooped up in our homes. We are all very restricted in our comings and goings. But because we share this commonality in a way that we just have to have space from other human beings from time to time, I need somebody to have a sounding board off of this, because my girlfriend was in the car while you were explaining to her that how many different states did you drive through from Indiana?
Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maryland, DC.
And you took this road trip because why?
Because I needed to get out of here, the humidity of the summer, which I always hate. and I needed to be back with my people who are much more politically liberal than my Southern Indiana environs. And
so you're feeling the pressure that we all are from one political party or another, and
yes,
you are more aligned with the people that reside in the Northeast.
That's right. Plus, that's the only area of the country that has a handle on COVID. So the rates there are very low, not raging like in so many other parts of the country. So,
Right
and
here,
I've never
great
been
state of Tennessee, red
and
hot.
I'd never been to Vermont and New Hampshire, despite all the time that we, lived in New York and New Jersey and DC. So I thought I'm going to go, and it was fabulous. Loved it.
Okay. And so one, you went to a bunch of cool places, and obviously DC is somewhere you're intimately familiar with.
Yeah.
And we will go through the highlights of your trip here momentarily, but the need to get away from people is something that I cannot seem to explain to people who aren't us. Like I don't know if you can describe it as social anxiety. I don't know if I've been telling that to myself as to why I get so uncomfortable in crowds, why I make faces of disgust and disdain in crowds when I'm out among people. It's not even intentional. I just do it. I just have one of these faces. But it is something where I'm trying to explain to my girlfriend that, yeah, sometimes I just need 3 or 4 days. I'm not ditching you for 10 like my mom is to my stepdad or my sister, my young, vulnerable, impressionable sister starting her senior year of high school. You leave her by the wayside in this place that you believe to be politically destitute, and you go off on a cultural experience across the Northeast. But like, why are we like this? I guess this is my larger question. Why don't we like people?
First of all, it's a mischaracterization. We do like people, but
Do we?
also I like people, but I like being alone. I enjoy being alone. I enjoy, exploring things on my own. As you know, I traveled all over the Middle East, largely on my own before I met your dad. And it's just, why not? And then also there's the boredom sometimes of being around a lot of people who don't share your interest. So that, those are some reasons, not all fit all the time, but being alone is great. I enjoy it. It's not,
I'm such a fan. Like I'm absolutely going to implement social distancing long after this is over, because it's so weird. We went to like the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, Dara and I, one time for just like an afternoon, and she had to like stop me and ask if I was okay, because I'm like making faces like I'm physically snarling at people because they get too close, or because children make me uncomfortable and they scream and they yell and they poop all over the place and you can't control them. You can't reason with them. I hate it.
Your attitudes are your own. I'm explaining. You used to love kids. I love kids.
You do, and you're an exceptional grandmother, or I'm sure you don't prefer that moniker.
That's all right. Gigi stands for groovy grandma. So
Groovy grandma.
That's my name, Gigi. So
okay.
I'm good for being a grandmother.
All right. So what were the highlights of your? Was it 10 days? Did it end up being 10 days? Your trip?
Well, I said it would be 10 days roughly, but I intended that it might be longer, and indeed it was 12. Because it takes a long time to drive. It's 3,000 miles, but
sure, you like people. You're right.
And it was wonderful. The country's beautiful. I went to see Frank Lloyd Wright's masterpiece, Falling Waters, in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is gorgeous. All these places are so beautiful. And because of COVID, so much is shut down. I mean, usually the Northeast is very crowded, but driving the New York Thruway and a lot of the I-95 and the interstates, it was really nice. Plus the weather was good. I was in New Hampshire, and I started off in 80-degree weather at the base of a cog railway that is the second steepest in the world. It's in Mount Washington. And by the time we got out, it was 40 degrees, and the fog was so thick you couldn't see 10 feet in front of you. So that was very cool. And everybody should travel all over the country. It's great.
Okay, so my audience probably has no idea who the hell Frank Lloyd Wright is. So give them an educational. You're here to educate, expand horizons. You've already alienated half the audience, so we might as well go for the other half. Who is Frank Lloyd Wright? Give us some of the lessons that you learned. Set the scene. Give the historical context. All of these things.
Well, Frank Lloyd Wright was, one of he was. And his concepts were incorporating nature with habitats. So it's absolutely stunning and unique, and he's globally recognized. And there's a school of design that he founded and still exists today. So, however, he was a terrible. Well, I shouldn't say, he was very.
Say whatever you want.
He was a flawed father and husband. That's for sure. But let's don't get into patriarchal society and.
No, let's. Listen. The whole reason you're here is to expand on some of these thoughts. Like people try. Wait, what do you mean? No.
I'm just saying. I'm not going to have hate mail or whatever comes via social media, which
you're not on social media.
Directed at me. So. No,
you're operating. You got the sweet spot, Mom. You can say whatever you want, and nobody can find you. The only place they can yell at me, I'm probably going to get the heat on this in my Twitter mentions. You don't know where the hell to find your mentions. It's a beautiful thing. I wish I could live with such ignorance.
That is true. I'm very blessed and grateful for the fact that I don't have to be engaged except when I want to be.
Exactly. You can pick your spot. So what this segment is typically devoted to, it's the end of the podcast. We've taped out of order today. But it's called 5 Good Minutes, as I texted you to try and prep you, and you ignored my text as you do during the middle of my COVID illness. Respect my illness. I feel completely unsatisfactory. I can't even think of the word, but I have been mothered unsatisfactory. I don't know what the adjective.
Unsatisfactorily.
Okay, see, that's what.
I definitely.
I was struggling.
Apologize.
I couldn't find it.
But as a bonus, you can get your dad to pop in here and say a few words. He's just strolled in from taking over the grand. Bend down, say hi.
Hello. That's perfect. That's all we need. That's all we need. Rick Reising, ladies and gentlemen. So the segment is typically called 5 Good Minutes. So while I stall, I'm going to explain to you the segment of 5 Good Minutes, and I'm going to allow you the opportunity to gather your thoughts. So I spend 5 minutes at the end of every podcast bitching about something that I didn't have the chance to get to during the course of the normal podcast. It doesn't have to be sports related. It can be whatever you would like it to be.
Okay.
So it's just imparting my opinion with perhaps a shred of wisdom or something that I know and some unique insight, rarely though, that I have on the particular subject. And so now I'm going to ask you, maybe not for 5 good minutes, but maybe we can have 5 good minutes on some advice that you would like to impart to the audience. It doesn't matter what it is.
Oh, wow. I really wish I would have read that email.
That's literally, I gave you an hour heads up. That's more than I do for anybody. That's all right. I can stall and you can think. I literally spend all day in front of this microphone.
I have very good advice.
All right.
And that is that it is every citizen's responsibility to pay attention, not just at this election, but all elections, because in a democracy, the people really do have the power. And if you neglect that power, democracy can wither. And so it's up to all of us to pay attention to what's going on, make your own judgments, and then vote. There's nothing more important really than reminding people that it's all of our responsibility the way that this country goes.
Are you excited about what you're seeing throughout the country with regards to that? Are you seeing people engage more on your end? Are you seeing people, who are you waving off right now? We're going to lean into the pot. Who are you waving off?
Rick.
He's hovering.
He's getting ice and stuff. He's creating background noise. I was trying to help you.
That's fine. That's you got to lean into the distraction. You got to make it part of the show.
So listen. Yes, I am, and it's not just it. I think it's tremendously exciting, and I know with all change, there's good and bad, but to see younger people of all political, affiliations and people who weren't even politically affiliated, be made aware of some of the long-standing injustices in our society doesn't mean we're a terrible country. We're a wonderful country. That is the greatness, really. That is America, that we are unique in this whole world because of the principles on which we were founded, that every person is supposed to have equal treatment under the law and equal opportunity. And we have been, the history of this country is to fight for that and make those principles apply, better and better. And so it's very exciting to see young people especially get engaged. And yes, I know there's excesses and there's emotion and all of that, but believe me, you all, I've been around the world a lot and I've lived in different countries, and there is nothing as precious as democracy. And so cherish it, take your responsibilities seriously, and pay attention to what's going on, and then get out there and vote. And there's early voting in every state, and there's vote by mail via absentee ballot. So with this pandemic, be extra safe and get an absentee ballot and make sure your vote gets in. But pay attention. We're worth it.
Oh, I think that's about as a good. You nailed the dismount. Well done. You wouldn't give me the good stuff on the front end, but you nailed it on the end. I just don't understand why the toilet thing is such a big deal. And now I'm going to have to explain this on my own, and it's not going to be nearly as good. You really sandbagged me here.
Well, I'm so sorry, but I'm so embarrassed that I didn't understand better.
Explain to people. Yeah, I let you give the plug. Explain to people. That's all.
All right.
I'm
Well,
asking.
I've never seen
Do it.
a guy use the toilet, so I knew the lid was raised. I didn't know. I just didn't figure it out, and so I taught you incorrectly. But I corrected myself.
Taught me incorrectly how?
Well,
Audio medium.
Because I told you had to sit on the china part, under the lid.
To lift the lid. Guys, to raise the seat to go to the bathroom. You just thought it was
so
for both instances.
I didn't know how it worked.
How many times you have to fish me out of the toilet?
Stop. just a couple, and I soon corrected. I figured that wasn't right. God, well, I'm going to kill you for this. I'm leaving.
No, you can't. I gave you all the time in the world to espouse almost all of the beliefs that I felt could get us through a 30-plus minute podcast. My mother, the War Department, Karen Reising. You can't find her on social because she doesn't want to be found. And I'm sure you'll see some kind of activity that she's involved in, but you'll never know about. Thanks for doing this, Mom.
Bye, honey.